Okay, so I would like to pass the stage to Professor Yao Yang, please.
Okay, great. So we have, so for this section, we invite three speakers from the leading industry, like leading expert in the industry, to talk about like the Web3 ecosystem in Hong Kong, and I will ask questions in both like English and in Chinese, and feel free to choose like which one can best kind of deliver the ideas. Okay, so let's start from Hashkey Exchange. Okay, yeah. Oh, okay. So maybe like so let's start from there. From Neo Blockchain,
Okay,
Hongfei. Maybe you
introduce
could
myself.
introduce yourself and your company.
Okay, my name is Zhaofei. I'm the founder of a blockchain called Neo, N-E-O. We started quite early in 2014. It have been how many years? 9 years since we started our project. And recently, we did a IPAC hackathon of Neo in Hong Kong, and we are also announced a new development called a new sidechain, which will be a EVM compatible and also MEV resistant blockchain.
Okay, and then stage to Alessio on Hextrust.
Hi, everybody. This is Alessio. I'm the co-founder of two blockchain companies. The first one, Hextrust, it's a licensed custodian for digital assets. We operate in 6 jurisdictions across Asia, Middle East, and Europe. And we've been in the space a little bit shorter than you, since 2017. But still, considering what happened in the space in the last few years, we're one of the longest standing companies in the blockchain market. The other company is Clearpool Finance. It is a decentralized protocol for the credit market, so basically for borrowing and lending. And we've been live for about 1.5 years, and we've originated about $500 million of loans. Thanks for being here.
好，大家好，我就说中文了。那个我叫丁兆飞，来自 Hashkey。那 Hashkey 呢是一个既长又短的这么一家公司。长是因为 Hashkey Group 已经有很长的历史了，有将近10年时间。但是 Hashkey Exchange 呢，从今年6月份、7月份才正式的在香港呢投入运营，成为了可以说是走得最快的一家合规的数字货币交易所。那么今天来到这里呢，也是很高兴跟大家分享一下，在这个行业中正在发生的事情，以及 Hashkey 在香港未来的一些布局和变化也希望我们能够充分的交流。谢谢大家。
All right, thank you for the brief intro. So let me start with a new blockchain first, because I guess the entire Web3 industry, like the fundamental thing or the fundamental technology is the blockchain. No matter like Bitcoin or Ethereum, they are all very big now. And can Hongfei introduce how Neo fights the MEV or censorship? Can you give your opinion on that or the innovation on that side?
Okay. So first of all, I need to explain what is MEV. MEV is minor extractable value or maximum extractable value, because Ethereum do not call them miners again anymore. So basically, it is because on the blockchain network, all transactions are routed in a peer-to-peer fashion. So everyone can see your transaction. If it is plain text, that everyone can see it. If I saw a transaction and I can take advantage of it, then I can create a new transaction with a higher fee. So so the miners will include my transaction, ordered it before the original transaction. Therefore, I can front run the original transaction. That's a way to make a profit. And also, as a miner or as a validator, they have the power to order all the transactions in certain block. So if you want to take advantage of this power, then they can reorder the transaction, not according to first come, first service principle, but in the principle to serve their own interest. And there's another kind of attack. It's called time-band attack. Basically, as a validator, if you have enough hashing power or staking power, you can even reorder the blocks. You can even rewrite history to make a profit. And last year, in 2022, the overall revenue, so-called revenue generated from MEV, is around 1.4 billion. And at least 1/3 of it is from harmful or toxic MEV. So that's why NEO decided to fight the MEV problem. And we invented a way called, not invented, but we had a solution. It's called envelope transaction. So all the transactions will be encrypted until it is included, ordered, and executed in a block. It's not completely, it's not encrypted all the way, but you cannot read it. You cannot read it before it's get ordered. So that's how we do it.
All right, thank you. Thank you for sharing the technological advance in the ecosystem. And then I hope to discuss a little bit on the infrastructure, on the institutional side infrastructure, about institutional custody and like the license exchanges. Particularly, I believe the Hashkey exchange hosted events and issued the platform token this morning. Okay, so the next question is to Alessio on the institutional custody. Can you explain to us that why? So there are many scandals, like particularly after FTX collapsed, that people talked a lot about the crypto asset custody, because most of the traders are still like more familiar with the centralized way to trade, what's your opinion on the crypto asset custody at the moment, and what's the future, basically? Yeah.
All right. So maybe before we get into FTX, just a couple of comments on custody for digital assets and why it is so different from custody of traditional assets. So actually, some aspects are similar in terms of importance, and others are quite different. The main one that is important and that is similar is the fact that you need custody to basically segregate the assets under custody from the intermediary that manages the assets. This is typical of all financial markets. It's the normal approach. It is common across all the most developed financial markets and jurisdictions. So this is the same for digital assets and for traditional digital assets and traditional assets, and it really marks one of the important points of custody, and we'll discuss how that affected FTX. But in digital assets, custody has a couple more use cases which are quite important. So the first one is that in the traditional financial markets, actually banks and intermediaries, they make a lot of mistakes on a daily basis. When I was working at the bank, you would end up your trading day, and then there would be people in some room with all the papers and everything, and they would be reconciling. And then they will call the other banks and say, oh, actually, the trade was wrong. Can you change this? Can you correct it? Can you bust the trade and everything? And you can kind of rewrite the history of the transactions that have been executed. This is obviously very nice because it gives you that kind of buffer protection, but it's also very inefficient. So one of the advantages of using the blockchain technology is that actually it cannot be, once a transaction has been done, it cannot be rewritten. This comes with advantages, right? That the history cannot be tampered with, but at the same time also with some disadvantages that if you write the wrong transactions on chain, basically the assets can be lost, right? So if I send my assets to you and I just make one mistake in terms of one digit in the destination address, I will lose the assets forever. right? And nobody will be able to retrieve those assets. So the custodians have this kind of responsibility of being to keep this kind of hygiene in the operational processes, in the precision of how we execute transactions, much more than in the traditional market where errors can be corrected. The third thing is, and it's probably the most important one, and probably the hardest to understand, is that in the traditional world, financial assets are basically entries in ledgers. It means that whether you're trading an HSBC stock, a derivative, a bond, or anything else across different markets is basically really aligned in a database. That asset doesn't do really anything. It's just an entry in the database. In the blockchain world, assets are usually, I call them live animals. They're smart contracts, they're pieces of code, even the simplest ones, and they have some financial functions, not only financial, but some financial functions embedded in the asset itself. So for example, an asset can be staked, right, in some blockchain protocols, or some other blockchain protocols can interact with some smart contracts to lend, to borrow, to trade, etc. So the asset itself allows you to perform some financial transactions that in the traditional world, you would need intermediaries for. Then in the blockchain world, the intermediaries can actually be replaced by these smart contracts. And it is the custodians that are the ones that can control the signature of the assets that are able to enable these financial functions that are already written in the code. So yeah, so the first function is segregation. The second one is the fact that you have to be precise because you cannot make mistakes. The third one is that the custodian is actually the one that enables some of the financial transactions written in the asset that in the traditional world you will need intermediaries for. Now, going back to FTX, and I'll close the comment, custody can help to solve some of the issues that we've seen with FTX and with other intermediaries. FTX and some other exchanges, they're called exchanges in the crypto world. We call them exchanges in the crypto world. They're not really exchanges, they're banks, right? So they run fractional reserves, they collect deposits from retail customers, and they use those deposits to lend it out to other clients of the exchange or externally to other participants. So they take risk, but they're not subject to any capital regulation. Now in Hong Kong, they are under some limitations, but until now, the unregulated exchanges, they basically didn't have to comply with any capital requirements. They could do whatever they wanted with clients' assets. So the case of FTX is a case of fraud. Even if they had used the best custodian in the world, probably the same things would have happened. We would have probably had a little bit more transparency, a little bit more controls, and probably the $500 million or 400, I don't remember, that were hacked on the same day of when FTX was shut down, they would have probably not left the company. But I don't think custodians can prevent fraud just by default.
You mean like intentionally?
Intentional fraud for kind of
Intentional.
a bank that should be regulated and it's not regulated. Yeah.
I see. So a follow-up question on that side, on that like FTX. It seems like a lot of exchanges, like before the licensed ones, it seems like they play the role of banks and also facilitate trades, and at the same time, like a little bit like the fund or trading firm. Because before I joined the HKU, it seems like I worked for a prop trading company. And the sense is that they actively manage their portfolio. Do you see that, say, custodian or like, say, for example, how the working with regulators or custodian companies can solve or regulate themselves, like the exchange, the unlicensed exchanges a little bit? Or do you think like exchanges can gain confidence from investors by working with custodians or not? Yeah.
You're asking me?
Right.
I think obviously custodians can help in terms of enforcing controls and putting in place governance, security mechanisms, etc., transparency. I'll give you an example. After FTX, us as a custodian, we communicated to the whole world that we would offer custody for free to all exchanges for 12 months, right? To help exchanges mitigate the same risks and this kind of reputational issues that they were facing because of what happened to FTX, Celsius, BlockFi, etc. Do you know how many exchanges contacted us to use us as custodian for free?
I guess
Zero.
Zero, right?
Zero.
So they want to enjoy
So it is the exchange's business until now, until regulation is in place, to not be transparent, to keep clients' assets and to utilize them to generate a yield. Apart from the top 10 exchanges, it's not possible to make money in this market. There's no liquidity. So all exchanges to make money, the only thing they can do is to take clients' assets, to lend them out, to invest them and to utilize them for other things. That's the reality. Now, if you use an external custodian, you can still do it because a custodian acts upon the instructions that the client gives you. But if the regulator comes to a custodian and asks for information, the custodian would release the information to the regulator. And the custodian has the ability to freeze the assets. So that's what exchanges don't want. They don't want anybody to control your transactions and to be able to freeze your assets unless it is the regulator that tells you need to go and get a license like Hashkey, right? And then you will need to follow certain rules. If you don't put the rules in place, I mean, be sure that everybody will find the best way to make money.
I see. So it's not incentive compatible for the unlicensed ones unless there is a rule. But fortunately, there is a rule in the licensing handbook for the virtual asset trading platform operators by the FSC, and saying that the custodian is compulsory for the licensed crypto exchanges. And now questions to the Hashkey exchange to Zhaofei. Okay, so given all the regulations imposed, like including the custodian of a client's crypto assets, I believe like custodian of a client's fiat currency finding should be very easy, that a bunch of banks can provide the service. So what's the main cost difference? I mean, like between like Hashkey exchanges and other unlicensed crypto exchanges, what's the major like cost differences there?
还是从2个方面去了解一下。第一个是政策，第二个是技术。其实 FSC 要求还是非常严格的，特别是对于资产的保险，那要求是热钱包100%投保，那冷钱包是50%投保，也就意味着所有的资产如果在热钱包里面丢失了，那保险公司就会全额赔付。冷钱包的话呢是赔50%，也就是被盗40%的话，那也是全额赔付的。其中呢2%的资产其实是在热钱包，98%是在冷钱包。每一次用户需要提币或者充值的时候，如果超过了这个限额，那都需要我们专业的团队去做冷转热或者热转冷的这么一个处理。这个团队可能要8个人以上，所以不是某一个人或者某几个人可以完成这个操作。进行比如说内部的一些被盗的事件，那就不会发生。可能需要很多人去这么做，那它的包括存储的硬件设备还有一整套的风控机制都是经过了比较标准的审核的。因为大家可以想象，就是保险公司要了解到你所有的一个内部风控的流程和机制，他才会愿意去给你投保。那他了解过后发现，没有问题，我也用可以相对少的资金去帮助你去承担这份保险，那已经是替大家就是审查过了这份IT security 的问题那么目前来讲的话呢，我觉得这部分保单可能是相对于其他交易所最大的一份支出。这份支出呢，其他交易所会有部分交易所是有保险的，包括我聊到的 Matrixport 呀，包括 OKX 的香港应该都会有相关的保险去投保，Coinbase 也会有但是呢，就是因为 SFC 硬性要求它的保额比例会比较大，所以这部分从政策上来讲是非常安全的。第二个呢是从技术上来讲，我不知道大家有没有之前了解过，就是我们在给 FSC 去汇报哪些币可以上的时候，会审查他们的合约。可能有些人会惊讶的发现呢，大多数的合约都是有后门的，都是可以把你的钱包里的代币给就是转走或者让它消失掉，都是可以的。 可能 USDT、USDC 大家会比较熟悉，是可以这么操作的。很多 Layer 2的那个 token 它也留有这样的后门其实这没有办法跟 SFC 解释的，为什么会有这样的一个后门呢？资产怎么保证安全其实这是一个链上普遍存在的问题，可能除了比特币之外的其他的币种 token 都会存在这样的问题所以这一部分我们是没有办法的。但是只要是进入到我们自己的冷钱包和热钱包的 token， 那都能够非常安全的进行处理。那这部分的处理的工作，像我之前讲的，除了保险之外冷转热的处理，然后冷钱包、热钱包怎么去匹配都是有一套完整的流程和机制的。所以我觉得对于这一点来讲的话，对于资金安全来讲的话大家是可以放心的。那同时内部FTX 内部的这个转入转出是比如说 SBF 给了阿拉曼达钱，阿拉曼达说我没有要，你自己给我的这样的 tricky 的事情，我觉得是不会在有牌照的这个交易所去发生的。所以对于资产安全，我们还是非常有自信的。
Okay, then a follow-up question. So for the cold wallet, like who are the controller? Who control the private keys? 我的问题是，对于这些冷钱包，那谁有权来 access 这些冷钱包？因为这是最底层的这些资产。
对，这个呢其实是一套风控的流程。那冷钱包放在哪里呢？是放在我们中环的办公室的大家去的话可以看到那个屋子，那个门里面就是冷钱包。然后呢，那个冷钱包谁来处理呢？是分不同的流程的。比如说有人去开门，有人监督他开门，监督他开了门之后，有另外的人拿到冷钱包来处理，再有另外的人去输入私钥，那可能是不同部门的不同人。所以为什么这个流程处理要5到8个人？就是因为他不同的人做不同的工作，不同的分工，才能够把冷钱包拿出资产到热钱包，热钱包再使用给到用户做充值或者提币的一个操作。所以在这里面谁去处理的问题，可能是不同的人、不同的职位，那肯定不是一个人去处理这个流程。
I see. So it's more about internal control system. And the last question is about like what kind of tokens or what kind of assets that people can trade or investors can trade on the licensed exchanges, because there are many debates about RWA or like using tokens to finance like kind of basically connecting tokens to the real world economy that people see a huge potential. If like we only trade Bitcoin and Ethereum, if you calculate the market cap is just kind of less than like Apple. It's not really huge market. Even total Bitcoin plus Ethereum is not kind of large enough to my understanding. But so what's the future? Do you see that regulators will allow more token listings or
对，因为事物都在发展变化嘛。现在呢，可能只有比特币和以太坊是被 retail 用户可以去交易的，其他的 PI 用户当然无所谓了，上什么都可以去交易。但是对于 retail 的用户呢，可能有非常多的一个限制。目前只有比特币和以太坊未来呢可能会有新的 token， 特别是像 RWA。SFC 也在审批当中，我只能说对，也在审批当中目前有计划上，但没有说确切的一个时间线。其他的代币呢，有一些要符合要求比如说第一个要求就是这个代币要发行超过12个月这是一个非常硬性的要求，就是你的新币，特别是新的 token、ICO 什么的，是不可能上的。那第二个呢，可能是要求你的这个代币呢是参与某些重要的数字货币市场的指数 index 的编写，比如说 21 shares 的 index 纳斯达克的 index 在参与这些成分的指数的代币它会审批的会更加的好快一点。那这些代币的数量其实也是有限的，所以目前来看 retail 能够接触到的，也是为了保护大家不要接触到太多的就是风险特别高的资产，比特币、以太坊，觉得至少能充分吃下 crypto 行业的红利。我们以前炒币的时候都知道，其实赚钱的也就比特币和以太坊，小币到最后都是盈亏平衡的，不怎么赚钱所以我觉得这两个是足够了。那后面其他的代币，包括 RWA， 也是需要充分的去探索一下受到 SFC 的肯定认可之后我们再能给 retail 开交易。对。
好，谢谢赵飞。So the last question, the concluding question to all three entrepreneurs for this panel, like what's the main difference between the digital assets, like kind of centralized or like whatever digital tokens versus, or in short, whether decentralization is still important? I mean, like we have a license centralized exchanges, we have custody, we have a bunch of like actually centralized infrastructure in Hong Kong, like by the by the regulators here. Do you think like decentralization from the blockchain is still important or not?
Okay,
Okay,
I'll
so
take the
from
question first. Yeah, because I'm doing a layer 1 blockchain, so my answer is definitely yes. It's very important. Decentralized blockchains are not digitalization. Digitalization is itself is only how the record is kept. And also it's a kind of automation. It doesn't change, it doesn't really change the workflow. It doesn't really change the dynamics between the cooperative actors in a certain scenarios. But decentralization dramatically changed all the dynamics. There are no central party to organize or to oversee everything. So it's a new way for people across the world to collaborate collaboratively to do some purpose. So my philosophy is decentralization is the future. It's the future of how we do massive collaboration across the world.
The collaboration and ownership, right? Yeah. Owning without a centralized entity. But the yesterday I went to the bank. I had to cash in a check from the US from an ICO in 2016. The payback, they arrested the guy. And I went to HSBC. They said the check would clear. It would take between 4 to 6 weeks. So, okay, good. Okay, I'll go to Citibank. American bank, maybe it will take a little bit less. They said 4 weeks. All right, so here there's a part. The check is a piece of paper, so obviously it's not digital, right? And obviously if it was digital, probably it would take a little bit less than 4 weeks, which is an eternity, yeah? But I think there is another big advantage of blockchain and the fact that it's decentralized, and I think is the standardization, right? So we have now a layer for settlement of financial transactions that is standardized across every jurisdiction globally. Right? It works 24/7, it's standardized, it's programmable. And anybody that wants to build or write code or write financial transactions or invent a new service on top of this new layer, right, has to follow the same rules. So it's not anymore like the financial services in Hong Kong. They have to respect the rules of the Hong Kong markets and the US of the US markets. It's not anymore that you can only buy an HSBC stock in Hong Kong on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, but the assets become global, standardized, 24/7 and programmable, which is a big revolution because it really removes all the jurisdictional silos that have been built in the current financial infrastructure for the past 100 years.
Thank you.
是讨论中心化跟去中心化的问题。其实，这里呢，我想上升一个高度，其实它不仅仅是中心化、去中心化问题，它是一个权力分配的问题。就像 ETF 为什么之前不通过，现在贝莱德申请了，大家认为通过概率这么大，就是因为谁去控制它很重要。所以呢，对于中心化的不管是交易所啊，还是 ETF 的机构啊，还是其他的机构来讲，那如果 old money 进来了，那他有权利去影响这件事情的事物发展，那自然而然就会以自己的能力去影响。他控制了中心化的工具，他就去发挥中心化的作用，他在中心化的市场上就会，我觉得就会走得比较快。那如果他有一天控制了去中心化的工具，那他也会去发展去中心化的一个事情。就像最近我们也可以看到像是有个对 Wallet Connect 一个 Web3 通信协议，很多钱包跟 DAPP 交互是通过它去连的，那这家公司呢也会去禁止俄罗斯的用户参与市场，所以在去中心化的世界里面，也是有这种权力分配和斗争的。 所以如果说讨论中心化去中心化的问题，我们如果只讨论技术，那永远是去中心化最优啊，那都不用想。但是在讨论事物发展的过程当中呢，我们还是要考虑到其他方面。
All right, thank you for joining the panel. A lot of insights here. All right, thank you.
Thanks.